Let's make sure the audio is okay here. I'm going to get the live stream up and running here. I'll post it on Twitter also. Let's see if it's going here. Let me update my homepage on YouTube. And here we go, live stream. All right, there it is. So see if I can... All right, I'll post this on YouTube and we can get this live stream going here. Let's see. What should I call it? Pacific Northwest Arctic Weather Watch live stream. Yeah, let me know if you guys can hear me and everything is okay. I had a little bit of audio problems early this morning when I was doing today's video. I got like halfway through and I realized the audio wasn't working, so I had to redo some of my stream this morning. All right, there goes the live stream Twitter feed there. Now, how do I do this again? Do I need to go? Okay, here we go. Okay, 5x5. All right, awesome. So it looks like that's working. Wait for a few people to come on here, and then we'll start chatting, or I'll wait for some questions to come up. But yeah, really anywhere in the Pacific Northwest. Looks like Kenny Lee asked a question. Looks like Northwest going to get very cold. Really anywhere in the Pacific Northwest could get snowfall. And really all options are on the table right now, from Arctic blast to overrunning events later on into next week. And yeah, we get some nice Arctic air moving off the BC coastline, convergence zone through the Puget Sound. We could build up cold air into eastern Washington and Oregon and then bring it through the gorge and bring Portland a snowfall event, or we could bring cold air down across the entire region here. So yeah, we have a lot of things to look for here over the next week or so, potentially multiple rounds of cold air moving down across the region here. So yeah, Boise could get snow, eastern Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, BC. And really the highest confidence in things right now is the very cold air moving down into British Columbia. It looks like it's going to be pretty darn chilly through British Columbia here. We'll look at some of those models here also. Northern California, I've not looked at that too much, but we'll go through the models here as well. We'll check out places like how far south this is going to go. I think on the last run, some pretty chilly air did move down all the way to Southern California here coming up. But I don't know about snowfall down in the lowlands here through Southern California or anything. Even the Bay Area is hard to get snowfall out there, but you could definitely get some interesting weather when you get some of this Arctic air moving down the west coast all the way down to California. So let's see, how many people do we have in here now? How do I tell that? Okay. Yeah, just got done eating Thanksgiving dinner here. Let's see. So 80 people watching already. Okay, yeah, so we can start going in and looking at things here. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of messages here. Looks like that's working. Audio seems to be working. Right now we're looking here at the European that ran this morning, the 12Z versus yesterday afternoon's 12Z would be on the right. Actually, yesterday afternoon, the 0Z. Sorry, I misspoke there. If we put that into motion, you can see that first lobe of cold air moved down across the region there, opens up pretty well across the area, and something changed kind of in this run. As you can see, it kind of just continues the troughing open here on the 12Z versus last night's run here. That kind of brings that secondary lobe down there. So just kind of keeps us locked in the ice box here across the Pacific Northwest, and then maybe even another lobe getting close there onto the extended. But we have a couple of rounds here coming up, and really the first lowland snowfall that I can see looks like possibly late Sunday night, Monday morning here, as we get some colder air coming across the region and some convergence zone activity maybe into southwest BC and on down through the Puget Sound possibly here. Yeah, Debbie Nelson's here. All right, Kelly Hamilton, good seeing you guys in here. Garrett Hartung is here. Yeah, we need more hype. I'm sure the hype train's going to get going here in the next couple of days, especially when we start getting ideas of what kind of details are coming. But as we look, let's go ahead and play this out a little bit more. And you can kind of see this polar lobe is open here across the Pacific Northwest. Cold northerly flow here. The trajectory is always kind of tricky though, getting snowfall west of the Cascades, but this Arctic air is really going to favor the interior of BC and some places, the eastern Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana as well. But there's definite chances for lowland snow with this kind of setup here. Yeah, Devin asked chances for snow in the Columbia River Gorge. That's always a chance, especially when you build up cold air, like the type of cold air we're going to have show up through eastern Washington. And Oregon here. So let me show you Spokane here for a second. I believe this is it here. Now, if you're looking here, this is 850 millibars here, Spokane. You can see the temperature is showing up below -10 Celsius here. That's very cold aloft, plenty of cold enough for snow. And then you can see just how far down we go. This is 18,000 feet. These are the heights. That kind of shows you the depth of the air mass. And the lower it goes, the colder the air mass is aloft here. So as we go on into early next week, we're going to really bring some cold air into eastern Washington here. And taking a look at Spokane, check this out as we go on into next week. Look at some of these highs, only into the teens, and then single digits later on through the week. I mean, this might be kind of an outlier here, but this is the European model showing this. Here's the GFS here as we go through Friday, Saturday. Some of these highs only getting to the single digits. That would be pretty impressive. And this is getting towards record low temperature territory here as we go on in through the later next week and the weekend, as you can see there. Taking a look here, this is the end of December here, and you can see the all-time record lows here. For example, for December 2nd, the all-time record low for Spokane was set back in 1919, which is 4 degrees. You know, Spokane could potentially beat some of these record lows set way back over 100 years ago in 1919. There on early December. Pacific Northwest Weather Lover is here, one of my moderators. Cool, yeah. Doing good right now. Just got done eating Thanksgiving dinner, so a little bit tired, but I'm here for the hype just like everybody else. So snow hype. What day will it start snowing in Portland? Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that. There's going to be, with any kind of Arctic air mass that moves into the Pacific Northwest, there are always surprises. So we have to remember that when we're looking at things. We're going to get this cold air in here. There's going to be probably a few rounds of lowland snow potential even west of the Cascades here. And so when we're dealing with this cold air, there's a few different ways you can get lowland snow. You can get it through coming off the coast of British Columbia over the ocean, picks up some moisture. You get resultant troughing there as the flow becomes unstable as it goes across the warmer ocean, then back over the terrain. Then you can get convergence zones that wraps around the Olympics, or you can get some northerly winds coming down the Strait of Georgia, and then you can get some winds coming through the Fraser River Valley here. You can get convergence zones through the Puget Sound here, or sometimes you just get a nice track of cold air aloft across the region here, and you can get snowfall that way. And then once you get cold air in place as well, if you bring a well-placed low-pressure system across the region, you can get overrunning snowfall events. So all those are going to be in play as we go here. Let me go ahead and let's look at some of these maps here, and I can let you guys visualize what I'm talking about a little bit here. So this is what I'm showing Monday morning. Let's back up a little bit here, and you can kind of see the flow is southwesterly all the way up Vancouver Island as we go through tomorrow, or actually Saturday afternoon, sorry. You can see the southwest flow across the region here, but as we go on into Sunday morning, you can kind of see this flow turn westerly. Some convergence zone activity across the Puget Sound might be in play here. But then as we go on in through Sunday night, look at this northwesterly flow coming down the Strait of Georgia here. Keep that in motion here, and you can kind of see this northerly flow coming off of British Columbia, starting down the Fraser River Valley here. So you can see there could be some convergence going on across the Puget Sound here as we go into Monday morning, for example. So we're somewhere across the Puget Sound there. Fraser River outflow going on there. There's bound to be some convergence zone activity going on here across western Washington. And right now, that doesn't look too favorable for Portland, but there is going to be some pretty cold air aloft moving into the region. So any heavier showers could bring the snow level down pretty close. And then as we go on into Monday, check this out. You can see the north flow through the Fraser River Valley here down the Puget Sound, getting all the way down towards Portland by this point too. So who knows, you could get some convergence down here on the tailing edge of the cyclogenesis as the low pressure kind of moves out of the area here. And then as we go on in through Tuesday, you'll notice the winds start to turn southwesterly again ahead of the next system here, bringing some warm, moist air in. Then watch what happens here as we go on into Wednesday. Westerly flow returns here. And then look at this rapid change. You've got some southwesterly winds coming across the San Juans up towards Bellingham here as we go on in through Wednesday night. And then look at all of a sudden this big wind shift here. There would be big convergence zone activity with a setup like this going across the northern Puget Sound and then potentially moving down the Puget Sound in a modified Arctic air mass. It looks like it would move all the way down towards northern Oregon here. And you can see this is another cold air conduit here. We always hear about the Fraser River Valley and this very cold air that comes from the interior of British Columbia here in the Fraser River Valley. Look at this. This is called the Okanagan River Valley here, and it is a cold air conduit for eastern Washington. You can see that one is going pretty well here by Friday morning also. So bringing some pretty cold Arctic air into the region here. So far, yeah, Leilani Unger asks about snow news. Yeah, so far it looks good. We're going to get some chances, and that's really all you can ask for at this range here across Pacific Northwest. Because we can go right up to the end, right up until the time of the event. Sometimes we're still not certain about snowfall. It's really tricky here. It's one of the toughest things to predict on the planet, really, is lowland snow here in the Pacific Northwest. We've got all kinds of different terrain features. You have to have the perfect trajectory to get cold air over the terrain across British Columbia down into western Washington and Oregon and southwest BC. It's a really tough task to try to predict this days in advance. But what we can see is that very cold air is coming to the region here. So we're looking at the Canadian here as of this morning, and I might have showed this morning also, but I'll go ahead and run over this again. You can see the initial cold front move down as we go on in through the day. Sunday here, very cold air moves into British Columbia, and that's really a big part of the battle here, is just getting this very cold air into the region here. And once it does, you start moving it off the crags of British Columbia here over the ocean. It starts to form a little bit of cyclogenesis here, little low pressure systems, subtle troughing here, and you can really bring some interesting snowfall events across the Puget Sound down through western Oregon here, southwest BC, when this Arctic air starts moving off on a short trajectory off the coastline here of British Columbia, wraps back around and moves into western Washington and Oregon there. So then, as you can see here, we go a little bit more into the future, and you can see the Canadian then brings another savage Arctic air mass down across British Columbia on through next weekend as well. So, we're going to have multiple rounds of cold air probably getting close to the region here. We'll just continue to watch. The models have been very consistent in showing the Arctic air mass move down into British Columbia here. Yeah, we can look at surface map here too as well. Let's look at... Let's look at the European, the 12Z, because we did not go over that in this morning's briefing. I will back out here to North America, and we will take a look at surface pressure and anomaly here. Now we're looking at current. You can see this is kind of that low pressure system spawning that atmospheric river through Washington and Oregon as we go through tomorrow. And then you'll see the cold air start to arrive here. You can see the low pressure system move. Cold front will drop and drape down across western Washington, eventually move down across Pacific Northwest here. And you can kind of see that chilly Arctic air moving down and just behind this low pressure system here. Now you see what's happening here as we keep this trough open across Pacific Northwest. That Arctic high there, it's a nice gradient. You have some modified Arctic air moving down, trying to move down into western BC and western Washington here. And then we kind of keep that trough open there and bring another strong low pressure system here on the 12Z European across the region, followed up by another Arctic high dropping down across British Columbia as well. And the troughing remains, could have some convergent zones. Some interesting plays will be associated with both of these runs coming up, both of these runs of Arctic air down into British Columbia here. So then as we go a little bit into the future, see what's coming, then we could get some kind of overrunning event here, especially for portions east of the Cascades, with cold air would be trapped out here as well. But then we would start to warm up pretty rapidly west of the Cascades with the system of this location here. But really, it's too far out there to even start to look at. We have, we got multiple rounds of Arctic air potentially coming down into the Pacific Northwest. So Chris asks, how do you think this event could compare to the Arctic blast of last December? Well, it could be similar in some ways. It's not out of the question that it could be somewhat similar, because like, for example, in the Puget Sound, we got multiple rounds. We didn't get a huge single snowfall event, but we got a couple 3-inch snowfall events and a few 1-inch snowfall events as well. So, we added up the snow pretty well, and it was pretty cold. So that's something that could happen here, places west of the Cascades. Again, it could be somewhat similar. Thanks, Devin, for the support there. And so yeah, that was the 12Z European run surface map here. So it doesn't look like that's a very strong low pressure system really coming across here. But when you leave this troughing open and you start to bring this offshore flow, this Arctic air, it doesn't take much. Like I said this morning, very subtle troughing here can really play out a nice significant snowfall event across portions of, west of the Cascades across the region here. Yeah, glad you guys were able to join me here. This is, this is fun. I just want to be here for the hype. This is a pretty interesting scenario coming up here. This was 12Z European here. Let's watch this cold air march down across us on the day Sunday. You can really see the temperatures aloft really cool down here as we go on into Monday morning. And this is really going to be the first round of potential snow, mainly west of the Cascades here. And this goes without saying. I mean, we're going to have more rounds than one for Eastern Washington, Eastern Oregon, for Idaho, Montana. Really, this is going to be, really anybody could get snow out of these setups here. But at the same time here, there's bound to be places that get really nice amounts and some places might not get that much snowfall. You know how it goes around here. Some people are left kind of disappointed in what they end up getting, and some people get, an overperforming storm system hitting their area. And thanks, Debbie Nelson. Thank you for the support there. Very generous. How cold on the coast near Lincoln City? That's a good question there. Let's check that out. Let's go ahead and let's duplicate this map and let's look at surface temperature here, and we'll go ahead and watch the Oregon coast as we go through here. So you can see, we didn't do too bad today. It was a pretty nice day out there today. You can see we're going to cool down a little bit with this atmospheric river tomorrow. And here comes the cooler air. You can see it in the surface temperatures coming down here. This is the initial cold wave moving down the region. You can see it's going to cool off all the way down the Oregon coast here. So the temperatures are going to drop. Sorry, this is the 18Z European. It only goes out 90 hours. Let me back up here. So we go on into the future a little bit here, and you can kind of see it's going to get pretty chilly down here all the way out to the Oregon coast. You can see some of these temperatures down by Newport and even down towards Brookings, Oregon here, down into maybe some highs only up around 40 degrees, it looks like, even out there as well. And you can see Seattle and Portland here by Tuesday morning, pretty chilly. And then the second Arctic blast comes down here. So you're going to be in somewhat of an onshore flow, it looks like, for much of this time here across Oregon. So it probably is going to be chilly, but not, not crazy cold for the Oregon coast for the most part. But you can see as you go further north, Washington coast, Vancouver Island, some of the coastline of BC is going to be chillier here. You can see some of these temperatures. Look at Seattle, 23. Look at Portland down into the teens potentially as we go through Friday morning. Look at Eastern Washington, just in the icebox. Oregon, look at British Columbia. I mean, negative 33 Fahrenheit is just kind of a ridiculous temperature there. That is just brutal cold. Aaron Green, thanks for the support there, buddy. Very generous. Cali looks like it will still be dry when we get cold. Usually their system when we get... Yeah, let's look at California here really quick too. Aaron Green request. Okay, let's go ahead and go to... Actually, this will be good. Let's just look at the multi-parameter here, and let's just watch some of these systems roll and see what kind of potential we have for California here briefly. There goes our atmospheric river. You can see that thing just kind of die as it reaches Northern California. Actually, sorry, this is the second one through Monday here. So this system is not too bad, actually. I mean, it's going to bring some snows down to the Sierras, it looks like. But you can see it kind of lose some of its punch as it moves past the Bay Area there. Maybe a little precipitation near the coastline if we go south. Now let's check out this next system here. This is the powerful polar lobe. I've been so focused on the Pacific Northwest. Let's see how far south this gets. And still maybe a little bit of precipitation for Southern California, but it looks like both systems could bring some meaningful snowfall to the Sierra Nevada here, though. That's one benefit of this coming up. And then who knows what the future will bring. It's going to get kind of chaotic here as we still look on into the future. But it does look like some good snowfall could come for the Sierra Nevada here anyway, but mostly light amounts, especially Bay Area south. So windstorm on Saturday night. Did I miss something there? Let's take a look here. As we go into Saturday, I mean, there'll be some breezy conditions around there. Yeah, I mean, that's almost, we're looking at almost an 8 millibar gradient here. So that's worth taking a closer look at also. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. We'll go Pacific Northwest and we'll go to surface wind. We'll go to 10 meter wind gust swath. So this just kind of is accumulation of the max wind gust. This is Saturday morning here. Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, look at, you can get some gusty winds up towards 40, maybe even higher amounts up towards Whidbey Island, straight on to Fuca here, Everett. Seattle 40 is not bad, and pretty good shot of wind to the Cascades here, Washington, Oregon as well. So yeah, blustery, but nothing unlike a typical November storm. But that's that's what's going to be ushering in this pretty cold air mass here. So that wind will be kind of the gatekeeper here, as then the colder air moves in behind that cold front. Let's see. Get it done, ask, are we going to have east wind in Portland? That's always a possibility, because when you start to look, let's back out a little bit here. When you start to look at these weather maps here, we're going to get some cold air, and it's going to build up here across eastern Washington and Oregon. And if we take a storm with a more southerly track and hang it out here, you know what happens there usually. If anybody is familiar with the gorge winds, if you bring a low pressure system down off the coast of California and back up across Oregon here, you can really cast a strong gradient where you've got a low pressure over the ocean here, and you've got really high pressure inland across the area, and you can really bring some strong gorge winds through Portland. But that's something that's kind of way out there at this point. We don't see anything imminent as far as powerful gorge winds right now, but this kind of pattern can lead to that kind of setup here through the extended, probably still at least a week or two away. So the real, Debbie asks, love those blobs. We start getting real cold wind. So let's take a look at that again here. This is, here we go. So this is 850 millibars. This is 925 millibars here. So this is about 2,500 feet off the surface, or it's actually at the surface for some of the higher terrain. So this will be a good indicator here. So you can kind of see we're doing all right, especially look at Southwest Oregon, pretty warm today. Not bad, but you can clearly see that atmospheric river kind of sag south, bring a little bit of cold air into the region here. And then you can see Sunday morning is when that cold air starts to arrive across the area. Now it depends on where you are really, but you can see the start to settle down across British Columbia here. And look at inland British Columbia. It starts to really get cold by Monday morning here. You're going to get pretty chilly across the Puget Sound. You'll feel that chill through the Willamette Valley as well, places of eastern Washington, Oregon. But really the big time potential for the cold here is with this second wave. Now you can see this really pummel down over the region here. Look at some of these temperatures here just off the surface are very cold all the way out across Vancouver Island, Washington coast as well. And you can kind of see that slide down into California and Nevada as well. So this Arctic air mass makes some pretty good headway down across Pacific Northwest. And then, like we talked about this morning, the Canadian has another lobe trying to get down across the Pacific Northwest. The European's been developing something more out over the ocean, but that's something for the extended. But the cold air is really going to arrive here by the time we get into midweek, maybe by Thursday morning. You're really going to feel it across the region as we get into Thursday and Friday. Swell and tides. Yeah, that's something that I look at occasionally here. So basically I'll go to this European map here, and this doesn't do too bad here. It kind of at least shows you what kind of wave heights are coming your way. This atmospheric river, that's, you know, that's a pretty good, we're looking at maximum individual wave height here. You can see that we're in the red here. So you're looking at some waves, 20, 25 feet possible as we go through tomorrow. It kind of hangs out. Wave heights aren't too bad on the Washington, Oregon coast here as we go on in through Monday as well. And it looks like it kind of relaxes and bounces back again here. So not bad wave watching at time here coming up, what, this weekend on in through next week. I mean, look at that as we go on into next week in advance of that next storm system coming down. You see some pretty good wave heights there for the Oregon coast as we go on in through Thursday. And I know we've had that sneaker wave watch, the surf advisory out there for some of the Washington, Oregon coast the last few days as well for the sneaker waves. Yeah, Devin, I hope hoping for a couple inches in the Columbia Gorge. Yeah, that's a lot of times I'm good with like a 3-inch snowfall here. You know, it's like, it's fun. You can pretty much sled in it if you're really a diehard snow lover, but it's pretty nice when you can get a 3-inch snowfall around the area. And the good thing about west of the Cascades, it usually doesn't hang out for too long. We can melt our snow here kind of naturally. And I know some places that becomes much more difficult. You get east of the Cascades and the snow can hang out for a while, especially in the colder years. So Kamishawari Kate, yeah, that's still a big concern up there across southwest BC and northwest Washington. That atmospheric river meant business out there. I was up there and witnessed that flooding and what it did to people's houses, and that was pretty intense. I mean, that was, yeah, I don't blame you for still having some PTSD over that event. Hello, Violet Dreams. So I'm not sure to pronounce that name. Tian Shao Ni, this winter feels unseasonably dry in Vancouver. Is it because we're shifting into El Nino? Not necessarily. Sometimes these La Nina years, the ridge can stay close to the west coast of North America. And while we tend to be a little bit wetter than normal in La Nina years, sometimes we go through these patterns where you can have some pretty relatively dry weather, because a lot of times this time of year we're getting atmospheric rivers and wet Pacific storms coming in here, and we're just not getting that much this year, not as much as we typically do. We're pretty behind on precipitation across the Pacific Northwest so far this November, but that can change in a hurry too as we go through December also, but we'll continue to watch that as we go. Now I wanted to show you guys this. So this is Monday morning. You can kind of see these convergence zones in the snowfall starting to show up across the Puget Sound. Still kind of some rain in the Willamette Valley, but really eastern Washington and Oregon are going to start getting some snowfall when this moisture starts making its way over there. This is the 18Z version of the European run. So this goes out 90 hours. We're maxed here, but you can see the Arctic high here. Pretty decent gradient from BC. As we get some outflow and we get some northwest flows down the Strait of Georgia, we can start to get some convergence zones going here across the Puget Sound on Monday morning. As we look at the GFS, is the 18Z GFS, same time frame here. You see it shows a similar pattern here as we have the troughing over the Pacific Northwest. And you see these gradients again from the interior of BC, bringing some cooler, dry air and some northwest flow down the Strait of Georgia here. Some convergence zone activity could be setting up across the Puget Sound. And even look down towards Willamette Valley. This air aloft could be pretty chilly coming in here. So some of the heavier precipitation could get in the form of snow down towards the lower elevations for western Oregon as well. But look at eastern Washington, Oregon. Much of this would be falling in the form of snowfall. Then you kind of see that cut off here on the 18Z GFS. Next system comes down, driven by the next Arctic high. And you can see on the GFS, this mostly remains snow, briefly turns back to rain, then back to snow again across much of the Puget Sound. Looks like the Willamette Valley might be just on the rainy side of things here, but you probably wouldn't have to go very high in elevation to get snowfall. We can see a pretty good gradient again from the interior BC out towards western Washington here, bringing some of that Arctic air into the lowlands. And going on to the extended of the 18Z, I mean, it keeps this troughing around with potential snowfall. And you know how sometimes this northwest flow can keep developing these systems across the region here. We can get surprise snowfalls as the GFS kind of finishes this up here on Thursday with another system kind of diving down towards the Oregon coast. That would bring a really nice snowfall event, probably all the way down to the valley floor towards Portland here as we went into later next week. But again, you don't want to get caught up on any one solution here as far as snowfall events go for the Pacific Northwest. Things can change quickly here, but really there's really good model run-to-run consistency. And look at this pressure gradient across southern BC here. This would be bringing some pretty chilly air down into the region here. So that would be an interesting setup there. So yeah, the GFS is not looking bad. Leilani Unger comments on that. Yeah, that would be a significant snowstorm for areas, really Everett south here in this kind of setup. Yeah, I must start working on. Yeah, it's becoming, when the winter weather gets active here, the presentations definitely take longer. I have to put a little bit more time into each one. And it's kind of tough because sometimes I'll mess up and I'll have to restart or edit something and I forget to include things, or then I watch myself talk about the system coming in and I'm talking too fast, or I forget to mention things, or I misspeak. It's tough because then I have to go on to work and stuff like that. So yeah. Thanks for the kind words, Debbie Nelson. I've lived in Abbotsford, BC since 2004. Oh yeah, talking about that atmospheric river of last year. Yeah, that was just, man, that thing was incredible. I remember being up there towards the border there and just watching people having all their belongings outside of the house because the water was just in the homes and just inundating areas. Just an incredible scene. Yeah, that's a good question, Devin. Devin asked, what do you think your winter prediction for the rest of the December? I've been so caught up in this Arctic air outbreak coming on here that I have not been paying attention to the extreme extended here. But you continue on with La Nina, and we're probably going to be back and forth between some bouts of less active and then returning back to active weather here. And I think we'll probably, we're going to get a couple of atmospheric rivers. We'll probably flirt with snowfall again at some point in December or early January, if I had to bet. But it's hard to make a prediction overall. I mean, I'm so caught up in the current pattern here, but I think that we're probably going to be experiencing some active weather definitely as we go through January here again this year, which is usually the case in La Nina years anyway. Yosemite National Park, December 4. I mean, you're probably going to get a couple snow events across the Sierra Nevada of California here as we go and over the next, I want to say the next week, a week and a half. There'll probably be 2 decent snowfalls all the way down through the Sierra Nevadas. That's always a possibility too. Glenn mentions with the Fraser River outflow over water, he's seen a lake effect snowfall over the San Juans south of Vancouver Island. That is always potential too, depending on just how that cold air comes across there. And a lot of times that'll end up banking up against the Olympic Mountains there near Port Angeles and Sequim and give them a nice significant snowfall there as well. Kelly Hamilton, thank you very much for the generous support. I'm trying to see all these questions coming in here. Let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's take a look at the snowfall potential here. So let's just duplicate this map here, and we're just going to bring up winter. And we'll take a look at, let's do Kuchera, 24-hour snowfall. Actually, let's just run total snow Kuchera and see what the 18Z GFS brings us here. So you can see as we go on into Sunday, that snowpack starts to build up, especially in the Washington Cascades, and it starts to drop down through Oregon, eastern Oregon. Look at the Cascades. I mean, that's a really good snowfall event coming up here if the GFS is correct. You can see a little bit of snowfall potential for maybe the Puget Sound, maybe the coastal ranges there in Oregon as well. And here comes the really cold air, and this next system is going to be interesting here. Some of the model runs haven't been showing big snowfall events out here, but these things can change pretty quick. And there it goes. Kind of as we go through Thursday, it looks like the Puget Sound's picking up good snowfall at this point. And you can see, look at this, Olympia south towards Portland. That's probably that snowfall. That's probably that low pressure here sitting off the Oregon coast here. Pretty interesting event that would be. But you can see as we go on in through next week, and this is Friday afternoon we're looking at here, and you're talking about 2-3 feet of new snow through the Oregon Cascades and much more potentially through the Washington Cascades and some of the higher terrain of British Columbia especially. And look at Sierra Nevada's not doing too bad as well. Let's go ahead and just run this all the way out. In fact, let's go hour 384. Why not? I mean, look at that up towards Mount Baker, 120 inches of snow up there in Northern Cascades. Pretty good amounts all the way down through the Sierra Nevada, the Rockies. This would be a very nice snowpack we would build up here through early December. That would get the ski season going quite well. As you can see, good snowfall amounts even through portions of the Willamette Valley, Puget Sound, maybe even some of the areas of the coast. You know, they can get snowfall during Arctic outbreaks as well. Eastern Washington, Oregon. Well, it's going to have all kinds of crazy weather here if this 18Z GFS were to verify. Devin, thanks for the generous support there. Bozeman, Montana. So let's see. I mean, it's generally drier over there, but you're going to, you get the nice powdery snow over there in Bozeman, Montana. But I mean, as we go out a couple weeks, I mean, where's Bozeman? Somewhere out in here. I can't see on this map that well. But I mean, you're definitely going to be dealing with some pretty cold weather out here. In fact, let's go ahead and do this. Let's look at the surface temperature map, because this thing was just out of control crazy here. Now we're looking at now, and you can see a lot of Pacific Northwest actually a little bit above average temperature, actually more than a little bit. But as we go on in through this weekend, you can clearly see the cold air mass override the region here. Look at Montana. Look at BC. I mean, every place really in the Pacific Northwest is below average by Monday morning, with some really cold air coming in here by Monday afternoon. I mean, look at British Columbia. Some of these temperatures are 30 degrees below normal Fahrenheit. The Puget Sound is dealing with temperatures, 15 below normal, all the way down into Oregon, Idaho Panhandle, Montana as well. And then you can see, let's check out the second lobe that comes down. And this is just kind of ridiculous here. I mean, what in the world? This is my first time actually looking at the 18Z GFS here, but this is just wacky stuff. I mean, they need to redo the scale here because it only goes to negative 33 here. And you can see some of British Columbia here getting 40, 50 degrees below normal, down in the Puget Sound even, towards Portland. Look at Montana just in the ice box as well, because Montana can be pretty chilly at this time of year. So to get 36 degrees below average through northwest Montana in early December is quite the feat. So just an amazing Arctic air mass in some of these runs here, and it just kind of hangs out for a while too through the next weekend. So when this cold snap ends, strange things can happen too. You can get gap wind events. You can get overriding snowfall events. You can get freezing rain events through eastern Washington and Oregon, some of the valleys. You can get significant ice storms out of situations like this where you've trapped cold air and it remains in place. It's hard to scour that cold air out a lot of times. So there's going to be interesting things that happen at the end of this cold snap if we get this kind of Arctic air into the region here. So let's go ahead and look at the actual 2-meter Fahrenheit temperature here. And let's start from now. This is going through Friday. Pretty warm day down through the Willamette Valley. Nice day up here in the Puget Sound for the most part. And then you can see that colder air start to arrive here. And again, this is at the surface now. This is not temperatures aloft. So by the time we go on into Monday afternoon here and evening, you can see some pretty cold air bunching up over British Columbia here. Puget Sound drops below freezing there Tuesday morning. You can see eastern Washington, Oregon, really chilly. Look at Montana, the Rocky Mountains, BC, very cold at this point. And then here comes the really cold air across the region now. And look at some of this cold air coming down into British Columbia. Negative 33 Fahrenheit. That's crazy. I mean, that's insane. And somewhere out here in the Rockies of BC is negative 47 Fahrenheit showing up out there. So pretty cold air to work with out here. And this cold air can really enhance some snowfall events if you get the low pressure on the right trajectory. Like if you set it up off the Portland coastline here or just off Astoria, you can really bring big snowfall events to Seattle or down towards Portland as well. And like I talked about, the freezing rain potential and ice storm potential as well. Chris, thank you very much for the generous support. You guys make this channel possible. Thank you, everybody. All right, so what should we look out? Yeah, that's kind of what I've been waiting for the last few days. Sid asks, when does the rug pull start? And that's something that happens during these events. All of a sudden things start backing off quite rapidly. But I'll say this, when the European starts to show things consistently for days on end, I start to become a believer, because the European's not an easy one to convince. And sometimes it's hard to get it to flip over to what the crazy things that GFS is saying, but the European is showing these crazy temperatures coming up here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 12Z run here as far as temperatures as well. So as we go into Monday, see that really cold air Tuesday here. Here's Wednesday. Here goes the second Arctic blast. And look at this. The European showing very cold temperatures in British Columbia here as well. Look at Seattle, 23 on the European here. Look at the Spokane at 1 degree here by Friday morning. Just some insane cold air moving down across the region. Look at this. Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington. You are below zero here, folks, by Saturday morning. So kind of a nutty thing here, and just it's good you can get excited about it, but sometimes you have to really watch out, because this is really dangerous stuff for people living out through eastern Washington and Oregon, Idaho, Montana. It doesn't matter when you start getting below 0 Fahrenheit, it gets really dangerous out there. And you can see the Willamette Valley down to the teens. The Puget Sound would be in the teens here. Very cold air all the way out to the coastline. Potential for snowfall really everywhere in the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, the Canadian model is on board too. It's Canadian was, really cold as well. So this is looking at the Canadian model here. So it runs only twice a day. So let's look at the 12Z surface temperature here. Let's look at the anomaly first on the Canadian. So as we go on through this week, you can see these really cold, crazy temperatures up through British Columbia here, also on the Canadian as well. And look at some really cold air showing up. The GFS was hitting a little bit at this yesterday. Some really cold air bottling up east of the Cascades here. And that could be a problem if we bring a system down in the wrong area. But look at this at the end of the 12Z. It's just kind of ridiculous here, showing up on the Canadian model as well. 240 hours out. but some very cold air up over BC as well. Yeah, Patrick Doyle, 1996, had an ice storm Puget Sound. Yes, we did. I remember that one quite well. We had a huge pine tree, actually. I was on the Kent East Hill area, and we were south of the hugest snowfall amounts across Seattle. We got really nailed by that. We had probably close to an inch of ice accumulation, and it weighed down like these huge pine trees were leaning down and touching the ground. The tops of them were touching the ground, and some of these flexible trees were, had broken down. My anemometer froze up. We had ice on everything. It was really treacherous and a really intense ice storm here in the Puget Sound. Can anybody see how many people are viewing the live chat right now? My view does not display it right now. Yeah, I love watching each new model run coming in. With each new European that I see showing Arctic air, I get a little bit more excited. And actually, there's something we can look at right now. Let's go ahead and do this. So I think that the control run of the ensemble control of the 18Z European is showing up right now, I believe. So we can check that out. I have not looked at this one yet. Let's go ahead and compare it to the 12Z run. You can see the newest run here on the left, the 12Z European on the right. Let's see if anything changed here. You guys are getting a real-time look at me watching this come in here. So this goes through Monday morning. Not much has changed here. Pretty good pressure gradient across British Columbia. The resultant troughing across western Washington. Not much has changed with that first wave of cold air here across the area. Maybe backed off just a hair on the extent of this polar lobe, but that shouldn't be too big of a deal. Here goes the second one coming down now. So this, now we're at hour 144. You can see some similarities here. Actually, a better pressure gradient looks like it exists here on the more recent European actually here too. So it looks like, what, 10, 18 millibars coming across, maybe close to Bellingham there. And you've got, let's see. So if we say 18, we're going 30. I mean, you're looking at, it's not quite 20 millibars, but a pretty good pressure gradient coming across the region here. And a little bit better, I think, than what's showing here. But it's pretty similar. So you can see the European is fairly locked in that we're going to get some cold air. And you can kind of see the trajectory of this is now coming out over water here. So you can imagine if this run goes out a little bit further here, it's going to continue to bring a nice trajectory for some potential snowfall, again, out into the lowlands of western Washington and Oregon. But right now, the cold air looks like a really good bet here. Let's see what else we can look at here on the 18Z run. Actually, let's do upper air temperature, and we'll compare those. Okay, so let's bounce back out. Oh, that needs to update too. Okay, there we go. 12Z versus 18Z on the left. So the thing is, with this cold air coming around, somebody's bound to get blasted with some snow, and somebody's going to miss out. So there's going to be unhappy people that say, oh, we didn't get snow. What happened to the forecast? And there's going to be people that are like, wow, we got more than I thought we would get. So it's going to be one of those things, which is usually the case here across Pacific Northwest. But you can see here, as we look out at the 18Z European run, the control run, we're at hour 108. This is late Monday night. You can clearly see the Arctic air. The European is convinced that it is coming, and it does not change much here between run to run. And you can see some really cold air getting out over the Pacific Ocean here off the coast of British Columbia. As we go on into hour 132, just some really crazy temperature anomalies exist here across British Columbia. I mean, this is really a good setup for snowfall into the lowlands here on the 18Z European run. As you can see, it is not backing off much at all here. As you can actually see some colder air getting over the Pacific Ocean here. Backed off a little bit for eastern Washington, but that's natural. That's going to happen in these runs model to model. Yeah, if you guys can like and share, that helps. It helps get the word out to more people if you guys can do that. 285 people. Yeah, by about 11 o'clock, the European is done running. So we have about 5 hours, 4.5 hours, though. That's not too bad. So 4.5 hours, the 0Z European from tonight will be out. And that one goes out 240 hours. I'm reading up on the comments here for a second. Yeah, that was the plan. Patrick Doyle asking about the windstorm series with the Arctic outbreaks. I was planning to do that as well, and I was hoping to try to get it out before the first Arctic outbreak came in here, but I don't think I'm going to make it here. But I will eventually do that, and I'll go over all the best snowstorms. The 1951, 1969, we have some in the 70s, some really good ones, 85, 89, 96. I mean, we had a lot of really good ones around here, and they're really fun to look at back in the past. How much snow will Portland, Oregon get? If I had the answer to that, I would be a rich man right now. But there's chances. There's going to be probably more than one chance for everybody here in the Pacific Northwest as far as snow is going to go. And every time we get Arctic air that bunches up over BC like this, we get some pleasant surprises for snow lovers. So there's going to be little troughing and convergence zones and systems going on here, and smaller low pressure centers that bring snowfall to certain areas that it didn't look like it was going to hit a few days before. So surprises definitely happen when you get Arctic air here into the Pacific Northwest. 1969. Yeah, that was a really impressive snowstorm. I wasn't even born yet, but at the same time, I would look at the setup for that one, and it was very impressive. Yeah, like Nathan Wolf says there's so many variables at play, but getting the Arctic air down towards the area is really half the battle. And by that point, it's a really good bet that somebody is going to get a pretty significant snowstorm out of it, and then there's always surprises. But at the same time, there's always people that get disappointed. Sometimes you just don't get under the convergence zone, or something happens. The low pressure moves too far south, or it stays a little bit too far north and you're in some cold rain. So there are ways that you can, that you can miss out on the snowstorm fun. Yeah, Bob says originally from Aberdeen, some good windstorms there. Yep. 1985 froze Portland 6 inches of snow, lasted 8 days in the ground. Yeah, that was a really nice storm. I mean, Seattle had 2 7+ inch snowfalls in 1 week, and I was like 13 years old. That was just heaven to me. It was so amazing. Yeah, Toe Bucket says each model run the past 3-4 days are getting better, and yeah, they got better the last couple days, and they're kind of holding serve now at this point. So we're just kind of waiting and seeing. These setups, the potential setup that is coming, are typical of other snow events, other major snow events we have gotten across the Pacific Northwest in the past. So this setup has the potential for big snowfalls even west of the Cascades. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but again, the synoptic setup has the potential for snowfall. Yeah, that's the problem, Chris, back there in Abbotsford. You get the cold northeast wind, but sometimes the moisture doesn't make it up there, especially in a strong Arctic outbreak. Sometimes you just can't, you clear it out and the low pressure system slides by to the south a little bit too far. But then once in a while, you can get enough overrunning moisture that makes its way all the way up there, and you can end up getting really big snowstorms. And sometimes near the end of the cold snap too, you can get cold air trapped up there and you end up getting freezing rain, or maybe even snow while it's raining in Seattle and Everett. Yeah, up there in the foothills of Sultan, if you're 500 feet and a little bit away from the water here, anytime Sunday night, you might see some convergence zone activity. You might see some flakes start flying. And then really you're going to have probably a few rounds of snowfall potential here as you go through the week for sure. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about the December 2008 storm. Thanks for bringing that up, Rebecca Rose. Yeah, 2006 snowstorm. Oh yeah, I remember that snowstorm there back in November too. Actually, Seattle got some pretty significant snow and some there in November as well in 2006. Then we had the big windstorm that year and back in December of 2006. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. This is Seattle, Tacoma. Check this out. This is the European deterministic as of 12Z. Look at some of these temperatures. Overnight lows, pretty chilly. In a few days, not even getting above freezing as we go through mid and later next week coming up there. Looking at the ensemble, this is the ensemble run here. So this is kind of an average, and you can see, I mean, not much above freezing some of these days, and some of these overnight lows down into the 20s, even mid 20s potential for Seattle, Tacoma. This is the GFS, the 18Z, kind of ridiculous here. I mean, look at some of these high temperatures well below freezing here, and these overnight lows down into the teens potentially here on the GFS. So GFS coming in hot and heavy with the cold air here. You're going to see it's actually trended colder here too for Seattle over the last few runs. This is each individual run. This is the 18Z, which is about 10 a.m. this morning. This is about 4 a.m. here, 10 o'clock last night, and you guys get the picture here. Just knock 8 hours off these times. You can see how it got colder here since November 22nd. So about in 2 days time, we trended pretty chilly here compared to 2 days ago. Yes, we are weather nerds. We are here for the hype. This is Seattle, Tacoma. This one has each individual. Let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger here so you guys can see this. But this is Seattle. This is the European, the 12Z run here. You can make it a little bigger here, but not too much. But anyway, you can see this is a 6-hour min temperature. You can see virtually all the ensemble runs are really down into the 20s here as you get through later next week here. And you can see the control really drops down towards the freezing mark and doesn't go much above it here as we go through this week. So you can see the pretty chilly air arrive here with that frontal system coming down late Monday here. But there could be some convergence zone activity around the area there as well, Monday afternoon and evening. And then the really colder air arrives as we go through midweek here with the polar lobe moving down across the region here. Pretty chilly temperatures, as you can see here on the European ensemble runs. Now look it up towards Bellingham here as well. Check this out. This is the European. This is this is the ensemble here. Actually, let's do this so I can get back to our normal view of things here. There's Bellingham. You can see pretty chilly temperatures. They're on the way. This cold air is a pretty good bet at this point. And look at the deterministic run of the European here, the 12Z. Look at some of these overnight lows down into the single digits for Bellingham there. Temperatures not getting above freezing here. Look at the GFS for Bellingham as well. 5. Look at that. High of 17. That would be pretty impressive there, as you can clearly see when that polar lobe's coming down into the area. Kamloops, this is the interior of BC. Just ridiculous temperatures showing up here. This is Celsius, so it's not as cold as Fahrenheit. But anyway, you can see several days not even getting above freezing or not even really close to it for that part. Once you got on into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And this is a look at the ensembles of the European here. So you can see as we get into later next week, BC, the interior is just going to be locked in the ice box there. As you can see, it's just going to turn into the Arctic here through the interior of British Columbia. You can see the first wave of cold air move in here, and the second wave here. And then you can see kind of just a mixed bag of what's going to happen onto the extended there. Yeah, bad time to be living in a car for sure. Yeah, we've had a pretty good dry streak there. I mean, we hit 14 days there for SeaTac and really much the Pacific Northwest. That was kind of crazy there. I don't know. That was quite unusual for November, and now maybe we'll get some redemption here. But let's go ahead and take a look at, let's do the GFS here, because I haven't seen the 18Z, the 500 millibar. This is comparing the 18Z versus this morning's run on the GFS. There's the weak frontal system that's going to come by tomorrow. Then the cold air arrives here. Not a perfect trajectory there. It doesn't get over the water too much. But we could get some convergence zone activity here across Pacific Northwest. And here comes lobe number 2. That one really powers down across the region here. This one would be pretty cold here. And then you can see that kind of doubles up on us there as we go through later this week as well. So if we put that into motion, you can kind of see the first lobe, second, and kind of a third one, or a reinforcement of the second lobe there as we go. Yeah, Lane says, yeah, that's the thing. If you start looking a week out and one model says, hey, we're going to get an Arctic outbreak and the others don't, you really got to be careful and just hyping the heck out of it. The cold air is probably coming. It's just the trajectory of how the cold air interacts with British Columbia back into Western Washington and Oregon that we have to worry about, because you can come right up to the time of this event when it's supposed to occur, and we can still not get snowfall to happen for some areas. You know, somebody always gets skunked in these events. Teleconnections. Oh, look, we got a bot spamming this place here. How do I block? Put user in timeout. There we go. Hide user on this channel. There we go. Okay, so yeah, let's look at Teleconnections here. We'll go ahead and back out of this, and we'll go to Teleconnections. And now let's look at Pacific North American oscillation here. You can clearly see this. We're into negative territory here for a while. And really anything after probably next weekend, I'm taking with a grain of salt. Even though we're still into negative territory, this is just going to kind of be, I think this will be flip-flopping back and forth here. And the thing is, once we get this cold air in place and we start to bring warmer Pacific systems, we can really, you know, like I said, we can do ice storms in eastern Washington, Oregon, British Columbia. All kinds of weird stuff can happen when you start getting Pacific systems to come back into a very cold Arctic air mass. So this is the European ensemble. So you can see we're us spending the time in negative territory here, which should really start to amplify as we get through this weekend. So we get the GFS deterministic, spending plenty of time in negative there as well. This is the 18Z run. Here's the European deterministic, plenty of time in negative territory all the way through early December. And this is kind of variable. You know, you spend a couple weeks in negative territory, you'll go back to positive for a while, then you'll go back to negative. It kind of switches every week or two. It's not something that you're going to spend the entire winter in negative territory. It's not similar to La Nina in that respect. Heavy scalar waves today, multiple directions. Yeah, those lousy bots. Let's see, what did the Canadians say here? You can see us, the models are in good agreement for that negative PNA, which is clearly shown in the model runs we've been seeing the last few days. Let's go the European weeklies. This goes all the way out to when? This goes all the way out to early January. Check this out. Spend our time, get our polar lobes here, and then just kind of bouncing around here. But really, just take that with a grain of salt. But you can see the mean kind of showing us bouncing around in negative territory as we go on in through early January there. Does any of this weather compare to 2014 February 10 below weather for Eugene? I mean, you can get some pretty cool air down into there. I'm not seeing anything that extreme as of right now. Keith Schneider. Reflect the sun. Have we swapped with the Arctic? Yeah, that's what happens a lot of times. You get those polar lobes and the cold air starts to move down into the lower latitudes, and you know, places like Alaska or polar areas up there at the North Pole can really warm up, at least for a time. Yep, no problem. Zenith 2455. Yeah, snow tires are a good thing to have, especially if it starts getting, I mean, even small amounts of snow can be pretty tricky to drive in. Okay, so what can we look at here now? I've gone over quite a bit of things here. Let's see. Ooh, do we have a new, actually, let's look at the European control. We haven't looked at the 10,000 foot trough and ridge position here. Here we go. European on the left, the newest one, the 18Z versus the 12Z, or maybe we did look at this, but let's take a look anyway. You can see pretty similar there. And then that secondary lobe kind of opens up across the region. You can see it opening up there, would be favorable for snowfall all the way west of the Cascades here as well. So you can see pretty similar with the 12Z through 144 hours. This is as far as the 18Z control run goes there. So BC West Coast Amateur Radio asked, any potential for thunder snow in the Pacific Northwest? And the answer is yes, there is potential for that. Especially because we're going to have, actually, let's take a closer look at things here. In fact, Let's close this down here. And we're going to go actually, let's go to the European. We'll go to the European and we'll go to 12Z so we can actually look at some severe weather parameters here as well. Let's look at surface CAPE. And I just kind of want to show you guys that it doesn't take much CAPE showing up on the European here, but as we go, really Monday morning has a chance. You can see some CAPE kind of hanging around the central Puget Sound. So there is going to be, you can get random lightning strikes with this CAPE around. And you can see some of it kind of hanging around here as we go on in through Monday there. Now let's see as we go a little further out. Does anything happen here with this next trough? Yeah, you see a little bit of CAPE here too as we go through Wednesday. So any kind of convergence zone activity, when you get cold air riding off the coast, let me put this into, you see this troughing that's happening here as we go on in through Wednesday afternoon. Look at this convergence zone across some of the Puget Sound here. This cold air is pouring off the coastline here. It's picking up relatively warm ocean air here at the lower levels. So you're going to get some unstable air. This warm air is going to want to go up into that very cold air aloft, and you get what's called convection. And as you start to bring these winds and they wrap around the Olympic Mountains there, then they converge and you get even a little bit more lift. And when you get that lift, you can start to, bring some nice convection across the area here, and you can get thunder snow. I've seen thunder snow probably 5 or 6 times here in the Puget Sound in my lifetime. So it does happen here occasionally. Yeah, I'll definitely do another one. Probably Sunday night would probably be a good time frame for that, because that's when looks like the first bout of snowfall potential exists here through Southwest BC, Western Washington. But as you go east, it's going to get really cold as well. So, I mean, you could be mixing in with rain at times here through the weekend on in through Monday, maybe a little bit on Wednesday, but then we're probably going to be dealing with some bouts of snowfall here all the way down to the lowlands, I think, with this event coming up here. Okay, let's look at, so that's an interesting thing. Let's go ahead and look at this for a second. Okay, let's go here. We're going to go to the European. We're going to do the 12Z. And we're going to go to upper air stratosphere. We're going to go 10 millibar height anomaly. Let's go to northern hemisphere here so we can see the whole thing. This is looking at the upper levels of the polar vortex here. Now, let's go ahead and, I think I can do this. Let me try this here really quick. Let's do one run before. So we're showing both 12Zs here. Okay, now I want to show upper air temperature here. Well, I can do it on just one. Okay. So you can see how this doesn't really correlate all the time with surface. You can't just look at this blue blob at 10 millibars and say, oh, this is the polar vortex, and this means it's going to be really cold in this area here. So this doesn't always correlate with what's going on at the surface. But if we look closely here, now I'm going to scroll ahead. This is the first initial stage of the cold air moving into the Pacific Northwest here. And then the very cold polar lobe, here it comes. It's right there. Now you can kind of see this ridging here that kind of shows that ridging here over the Pacific Ocean here. So this is not my area of expertise. So I'm still trying to learn at how this upper air polar vortex, because a lot of times it transitions at a much later time frame down at the surface versus up at the upper levels of the stratosphere here. So it does look like there's a correlation in the kind of the overall ridging here across the Pacific Ocean here, helping to drive down this north and northwesterly flow. So that's as best as I understand it as of right now. But you can kind of see it there too, as well as the cross polar flow comes all the way from Russia, Siberia, the North Pole down on the other side of this ridge. And that's what's happening here for us here in the Pacific Northwest. North Bend, Washington. Yeah, you guys are going to be probably having some multiple bouts of snowfall there, especially get any terrain elevation here in the Pacific Northwest, and the snowfall starts falling in big amounts. Yeah, that's a good, I mean, that's kind of life here in the Pacific Northwest. We are right on the borderline. It is tough to get snowfall down to the lower elevations here west of the Cascades. Up in the Cascades, it's much easier. You know, you get a kind of elevation here and you can get locked in some snowfall here pretty easily. And really that's why, you know, this is one of the benefits of settling down on a coastal region here. You get lower elevation, you get less snowfall, and you get less crazy weather as a general rule. Duval, Washington. Yeah, I mean, you're going to be dealing with some convergence zone activity up there probably Sunday night into Monday morning. So you've definitely got snowfall potential. And then you're going to have that troughing kind of around the area here as we go through the week. So you're probably going to have multiple chances there in Duval, Washington for some snowfall. Yeah, I mean, sometimes certain areas always get surprises in the snowfall amounts. You can see Everett Rain Fan talking about that 11 inches up there in Everett. And sometimes you just end up in the right spot. But on the flip side, it's easy to get skunked in these events here for some of the region. What causes the system to stall? Any chance a pile of snow from a stall? Yeah, you can get that kind of... I mean, sometimes when you're dealing with these systems, let me show you here. Where were we? So you can imagine this cold air is just kind of flowing off the continent here, off of British Columbia here, and it just continues to wrap around here and move moisture off of the Pacific Ocean. So you could, you know how we have lake effect snowfall off on the Great Lakes to our east. This is like similar to an ocean effect snowfall. You're moving cold air off the continent here. It gets over the warm water, and that warm water, you know, that warm air at the surface wants to rise, and it wants to create this low pressure and cyclogenesis. Sometimes this little troughs can hang out for a while, and you can continue to bring this ocean air a little bit unstable at the lower levels into the terrain here, and it can wrap around terrain features. You can get convergent zones downwind of those terrain features, and you can get some really impressive snowfall amounts because the cold air aloft is going to be in place. And so if you get convection that's going 5, 6, 7,000 feet up in the atmosphere, you're getting really cold temperatures here, and you can really bring some heavy snowfall around the area underneath those convergent zone bands. So that's one way that a system can stall across the area. Brian Hicks, welcome to High Tier Channel Support. Thank you very much for the support, you guys. Another way this can happen too is when you have cold air in place, and say you have a dome of high pressure over British Columbia, and it's in place through Seattle down through Portland, and you bring a low pressure system around that Arctic high here, and you kind of set it up off of the Oregon coast, you can really bring a prolonged period of snowfall on the north side of that low pressure system as it moves down into Oregon, for example, or if it moves into the mouth of the Columbia, you can really blast Seattle northward with some heavy snowfall amounts on the north side of that system. It takes several hours, you know, for that system to move across the region, and you're getting heavy snow on the north side. It can really hang out for a while and bring significant snowfall events. Yeah, Lane, 665 feet. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll get you a little bit of needed elevation to get you some snowfall there. But yeah, Adventures with Paul. I talked about that a little bit here a few minutes ago. The thunderstorm in Seattle. Yes, it does happen there. I mean, I've seen it before. I can remember being little and seeing it. I remember it happened in 1990, December. We had thunder snow across downtown Seattle there with some really heavy snowfall amounts. I saw thunder snow in 2011. Down here by Normandy Park in Des Moines. You know, it happens around here. It's not that uncommon, really. Eatonville. I mean, we're not forecasting snow for individual locations just yet. We're waiting to get a little bit closer here, but right now, every place in the Pacific Northwest has a chance of snowfall with this setup coming on through next week. What day is the Apple Cup on? Somebody remind me. I forget. Is that going to be on Saturday here coming up? Yeah, Lowell Person, 4,400 feet. That'll do it. You probably get a lot of snow. Oh, tomorrow. Okay. Here, let's go ahead and look at it tomorrow then. So what time does the game? Is it in Pullman tomorrow? F Jander 99301, welcome to Basic Channel Support. Thank you very much. 7:30 p.m. tomorrow. Okay, so this is looking at about 10 a.m. tomorrow. Atmospheric river kind of hanging up over western Washington. Pullman, yes. Okay. So you can see that this is about 7, looks like a little bit of precipitation coming about 7 p.m. over there for Pullman. So I don't know. That's going to be kind of close. It might, if it hangs up just a little bit, it does look like it's kind of light down there though. So I don't know if that's going to be, will it get there in time? But yeah, there's probably some precipitation chances there for Eastern Washington. That would be kind of interesting. Saturday, not Friday. Okay, nope. Now let's go ahead. Let's plow ahead to Saturday here. Saturday evening looks like it's going to be dry. Maybe a little bit of light snowfall in Northeast Washington. Maybe the passes are going to start getting some snowfall going on, but Pullman looks good Saturday night. No problem. Yeah, thunder snow is one of the great things about weather. If you ever get underneath thunder snow, you know you've hit the lottery for the day there. Well, I think I have to go back upstairs and, get the kids settled and whatnot and maybe eat a little bit more before I go to bed tonight. But I'm going to do a full briefing again tomorrow morning. I appreciate you guys all coming on here. I'm glad. I hope you guys got something out of this tonight. It was fun doing the Q&As and just kind of randomly going back and forth. But the system does look very intriguing coming up here through the next week. Looks like it's going to get really cold across British Columbia here. We're probably going to have at least 1, 2, maybe 3 rounds of snowfall for much of the area. And we're going to work out these details as we get closer to each individual setup. Right now, the first chance looks like Sunday night into Monday morning, mainly Southwest BC, Western Washington, and really east of the Cascades. Some very cold air is on the way. West of the Cascades, it's a little bit more tricky, as always, with getting cold air into the region here. So don't get your hopes up just too much just yet. We're going to try to break down these systems individually, one by one, and you'll have a lot better idea on what to expect. Yeah, a lot of fun tonight. Thanks, everybody, all my members on here. I can see you guys commenting and everything. Get ready for flight delays and cancellations. Yeah, that's the potential here. It gets kind of crazy at SeaTac in Portland when you start getting frozen precipitation around up through Vancouver, British Columbia as well. But anyway, yeah, have a good night, you guys. We'll do this again tomorrow morning. I'll put out full video briefing about tonight's European run, and both of them actually. We'll do the 0Z and the 06 tomorrow, and we'll check out the model runs consistency and see how we're doing. So I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks everybody for stopping by. You guys make this channel possible. It's been really fun. Hopefully we can keep it going, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Thanks everybody.